Earlier we were talking about land. What do you think is a connection between land and language, at least from your perspective?
If you have a connection, you have a connection to a place of birth, you have a connection to a time of beginning, and you have a connection to an incident, a circumstance, a condition, a purpose, a time in your life. At what time in your life was conception made? And what time did you pop out? What time, your birth? You know? And that connection to the land. The place I was born is now under tons of concrete and 40 feet of water. It's called the Big Bend Dam, you know, along the Missouri River. But it's still a connection to my place of birth. And that'll never go away. So my land base is my connection to my place of birth. A lot of people don't have that. A lot of people were born looking into the face of the masked marauder, you know, in a clinic, in a hospital, in a hospital room, or in a home birth, you know. But what did they first see? You know? The first thing I seen was green and snow, you know, and trees and grass and animals. You know? The first thing I heard was dogs barking. You know? And I don't remember looking in to the masked marauder, you know, a doctor with a white thing over his face. I remember looking into the face of Grandma, you know. So that connection to the land. What do you smell? What do you hear? What do you taste? What do you feel? What do you sense? They call them the five senses. But to determine that, they had to classify all of that. And through that classification, that connection disappeared. It wasn't lost. It's just confused. You know? How did I get like this? You know? When I was this way over here, how did I get like this? How did, in that short period of time, how did I get so lost and become so lost and get so confused? Why am I so confused? Why am I so disturbed? Why am I hurt? What happened to me in 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years? What happened to me in 40 years to make me so mean and violent and tragic and awful and wicked and cold and cruel and unnatural and obscene and mean in 40 years? What happened in that period, short period of time, to make me almost impossible to get along with? Other than the fact that I lost my connectedness. I have never lost my connectedness. Because I'm connected to my mom, and I'm connected to my grandpa, my grandma, and my dad, my uncle and my aunt, my niece and my cousin. All of life is connected, and I'm connected to all of life through the land and the water and the air and the rock and fire and green. The 7 elements that consist in our ceremony, the 16 medicines that are in our ceremonies. The first being water, the second being fire, the third being the conductor, the implicator, the necessity, the obligation, the responsibility. We all are responsible for our lives. And when we become irresponsible, that life is threatened. And it's threatened now more than ever before, because we have lost our connection. We have lost our connectedness. And nothing is sacred anymore.
Do you think that has something to do with buying and selling land?
It has more to do with the disconnectedness to the land. The buying and selling of property is a negotiable bond, essential to life. But the buying and selling of land is the transformation of slavery to productivity. It's still slavery, but it has become a slave trade, like white slavery. That's why today the immigration law that was passed, or that's pending, is going to interfere with not only the poorly immigrants, but all of the people of this world. Because we're all dislocated and transferable and operable. And we have to negotiate that negotiable bond to be presentable with that situation or that condition or that purpose, that proposal, that declaration that has just been inserted into Congress called the immigration law. That will affect indigenous people more than the migrants that they want it to affect. See? Because land cannot be sold, or no one can steal it, or even borrow it, or misplace it, or mislay it, or misuse it, because it's alive. And they could tell just by looking out at the weather today. And they're afraid. And with good reason, because the mother is taking it all back. And whoever's in the way, God bless them. Because that's the law of creation. And it's not the strongest or the weakest. It has nothing to do with the weakest and the strongest. It has to do with the implications behind the struggles of indigenous people. And that has been going on for 1,000 years, all over. So whether one does or whether one doesn't is not the point of interest.